it later, but okay. Let's see. Well, hang on here. I got my. Okay. Well, I'm gonna go ahead and start it, I guess. All right, everybody. Welcome back to the Heath Barn. In this episode, I am extremely excited. The voice of the Illini, Mr. Barnhart, is here. Thank you so much for doing this.
Oh, you're very welcome.
Yes, this is awesome. I have a lot of questions, but before we start, what'd you think of the game last night?
The game was one of the most unique ones I've seen in recent years. In fact, it turned out Illinois, it was the highest scoring, first time they had scored 100 points
Yes.
in a Big Ten game in regulation in 30 years. That was the start.
Right.
I figured it was further back because I've been doing the games 22 years now. I don't remember anything in a Big Ten game in regulation.
Yeah.
We had a game at Rutgers that went 3 overtimes that was...
I think that was a Malcolm Hill game, wasn't it? When he had a lot.
Something like that.
Yes,
it was a very high scoring game. Both teams were in the hundreds on that particular game.
Right.
But last night, for a Big Ten game in late February, that was unusual.
I agree. I felt like, I'm trying to think, I saw something today, and I don't want to mess up the stat, but it was something along the lines of, it was the first time a team had shot 70% from 2, 60% from 3, had 5 turnovers or less, and lost, I think.
And lost by 8. Yeah.
Right, yeah.
Minnesota, yeah.
Yeah. So, it was, and just before we get started, though, the fan hat for a second. I mean, I love this team a lot, but I feel like, man, they've got some stuff to tighten up defensively. But, just outscoring teams. Because I remember the Iowa game, people were saying, well, they looked a lot better defensively. And I was thinking, well, they still gave up 85, so there's some things to tighten up. But, I hadn't seen a game like that. I can't remember the last time. I mean, like I said, it was just the NBA score, so.
And really a low NBA score.
Right. These days, yes.
Yeah.
That's the thing. I feel like it's just kind of all going this direction.
Yeah.
Because the NBA's, with defensively with them as well. But well, I'll start here. I have seen you on other things, and we'll get through how you came, your life and starting out, things like that. But first of all, you said I saw where you lived in Tolono and grew up on a farm.
I did.
Yes.
Yeah, west of Tolono, 2 miles west. It's right there by the interstate, basically.
Gotcha.
It wasn't quite in our backyard, but it was fairly close.
Yeah.
And grew up on the farm there. We all the
How
usual things.
were you on the farm?
Oh, it was fun. It was fun. Yeah, it was a lot of hard work, a lot of early mornings.
Yeah.
I think the work ethic you learn on a farm carries over in life a lot.
Definitely.
For sure. And we didn't have a lot of money, but we made enough. My dad made enough. He worked a couple of jobs. He farmed. He worked at night as a janitor at the University of Illinois.
Really?
He basically supported the family doing that. We had 5 kids total in the family. So, but it was hard work and dependability and show up on time and all those things you kind of learn being on a farm.
Yeah, my dad farmed as well, and I was more of a gopher. I had an older brother that was 4 years older than me, so my dad never let me operate any machinery more than like a lawnmower, which was good.
Yeah.
But I was more of a gopher. But I don't know if I enjoyed it, but I never had interest in that being, what I did or anything. I just wanted to play ball all the time and stuff like that. And Dad that's what he wanted me to do. But I was fine. I mean, I did what I could, but borderline liability at times, I would say, just from kind of like what I was telling you with this technology. Same thing with machinery, But we, my mom's first grade teacher, Dad was a farmer, and that's how we, and I got youngest of 4 and everything. So, yeah. But so when you were there, I know you said you went to a bunch of Illinois games growing up and everything. I remember, when you're young, I don't know if you had the same kind of feeling, but kind of similar to going to Cardinal games. I mean, I'm a Cardinal fan. Like growing up, first time you see the arch when you're going down, when you're on 70, it's the same kind of thing when you're young and you see that big white bubble, when you're pulling up, getting close to the stadium. I don't know if you felt that same way.
Sure.
But do you have any memories, and not the obvious ones, like like Eddie Johnson, you know, like last second.
Mhm.
Do you have any little like other kinds of memories that stick out? Going to the Assembly Hall. Now it's State Farm Center, obviously,
Yeah.
but Assembly Hall when you were young.
Well, we had my dad had season tickets, probably late '60s, after the Assembly Hall had opened.
Yeah.
Started way up in C section, a few rows, and he kept moving down. He
Right.
eventually got into the second row of B
Yeah.
on the north end. If you look at, you're running off the court in the tunnel at the north end to be up to the left slightly.
Yeah.
It's kind of where those seats are now, the special dining.
Right.
I don't
Yes.
know what the club seating I think they call it, or whatever
Yeah.
it is. That's where we sat, and so we sat in those same seats for years.
Right.
And we had 2 tickets. He had 2 tickets, and he would take one of his kids. We rotated. I, being the oldest, usually got the choice of which games I wanted to see,
Yeah.
and so I'd choose Indiana or Purdue or the games you wanted to see, and leave the other ones to my brothers and sister,
Yeah.
to kind of choose from. So that I guess that was the perk of being the oldest. But
So you're the oldest of
5.
really?
Yeah,
Gotcha.
the oldest of 5.
Yeah.
And so, and going to games, and there was Bob Wright, who was the old coach at one time, played at Illinois. Of course, John Wright, and
Yes.
senior and junior, and then of course John Paddock, who had the touchdown passes this last year.
Right.
Kind of that whole family, but the Wrights used to sit in front of us. I remember that.
Huh.
And I also remember that we would often not park in the paid parking lot. We'd park at the hog barns, which are
Yes.
where the research park is now. And we'd park down there and run to the games before and after the games. I remember running out from the Assembly Hall
Right.
in the cold
Yes.
with
absolutely.
my dad to our car.
Yeah. Yeah. I got lucky when I was little because one of my older sisters we went to Shiloh. She played for Shiloh, and they made it to the Class A, like the high school girls made it to the Final Four all 4 years she was in high school. So she got to play 12 games at the Assembly Hall in high school. So I, very lucky to go there and just watch her growing up. And I also remember her coach. This was right in the thick of the Flying Illini, and I'm not sure if he gave me a guest pass or something. That part I don't remember, but he waved me down and let me go down in the locker room and see like the Illinois locker room, with Anderson, so I'm looking at Anderson and Battle's locker and all those guys.
Yeah.
So it was
That's
really
pretty cool.
But I do, it's a great place. I mean, I love it. But, okay, so let's moving on here. So you said that you were a history major, correct?
I was.
And
Yeah.
I know I saw something where you said you were shy and things like that, like
Very
growing
much
up.
so.
Yeah. And I was kind of curious because I get that, and I also, is it something to where when you start doing something, just the more you do it, realize you're good at it, you gain your confidence, and then the shyness just kind of goes away. I'm
Yeah,
assuming,
no,
right?
that was
Yeah.
entirely it.
Yeah.
Part of it was at Liberty University, where I went to college.
Right.
I was a history major at the start,
Yeah.
and very introverted, very shy.
Yeah.
And the thing that appealed to me when I kind of got into radio, because I had a friend of mine who kind of got me into it, asked me to help him out. He was doing some games for I think the Liberty women.
Yeah. One question about that
yeah.
real quick. You said that, okay, I can't remember what his name, but you said his goal was to call North Carolina games for North Carolina.
That's right.
Okay, now what, I don't want to, where did he end up going with his?
He wound up. He didn't wind up doing North Carolina because Woody Durham did those games
Right,
for a
yeah.
long time, and his son Wes is a well-known sportscaster.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then there's another guy who's doing the Tar Heels now. In fact, when we played North Carolina in the championship game, Woody Durham was still doing the games.
Yes.
So
Gotcha.
that was how many years later.
Right.
But he did he did some TV work for the Liberty Flames Network. He did some other work for some regional
Yeah.
sports networks in the South, but never did get to be the voice of the Tar Heels.
Yeah. Well, that's, yeah. But, so whenever you were, when you first started doing it, I was going to talk about being shy too, because that's one where, I think people need to understand that too. It's like, because there are a lot of people out there, like, I even think of, not to talk about us, but like, good example, like last night when I'm at home and my son's 7 years old, he's pretending he's plays for Illinois, he's playing the whole time, he's dancing, he's shooting, he's doing all this, but you get him around people and it's just, nothing. So I worry about him. I mean, I'm not worried. As a parent, I worry because it's like he's so young. I mean, he'll grow out of it, but I need to use you as an example because it's like he needs to understand that if you're good at something, if you gotta let people know, or they're never gonna find out. So I was just wondering. So how long did that take? Like, okay, let's say you start calling games at Liberty. How long do you really feel like it took before you felt completely over that and just completely confident?
I would say within a couple of years.
Yeah.
I think the thing that helped me, the thing that attracted me to doing the radio was that I could be heard and not seen.
Right.
That was part of it.
That's one thing.
I never was really interested in TV because they see you.
Right.
Now, as it turned out, I did wind up doing some TV as my career went along, and it took a while, even after I'd done radio for a lot of years, to feel comfortable enough on TV.
Yeah.
Even though in a general sportscast of a game, you're not on TV more than a minute and a half,
right? Yeah.
Or two, but it still took a little getting used to.
Yeah.
To do that, but once I was able to get on and do it, and like you said earlier, I felt comfortable doing it. I got some confidence. Hey, you're pretty good at that,
right?
And then it kind of grew from there. I had some other people who told me I wasn't very good at it,
wow.
So that was a little discouraging at the start. But I had no concept of how long it might take to kind of figure out what you're doing and then do it well.
Do you have your first game you ever called?
First game? I don't know if I get the first game. I've got some early work on cassette tape,
right?
From 40 years ago that is in a box somewhere.
If you listen to it now, would you think? I mean,
no, you wouldn't. You wouldn't recognize it.
Right.
I had some of these a few years ago. I took out some of the tapes and was going through them and kind of reorganizing them and my daughters, who are now in their 20s, but when they were younger, I would play that for them, and they were like, "That's not you, Daddy.
Right.
That's not you at all." And it was like, well, I could see why, because it didn't sound anything like
right.
it. So.
Okay, I have questions too about one thing I did not know is if you want to give a brief explanation about how you got to this point, but how did you get to Anaheim? And then I got a couple questions about your time there, because I had no idea that you did MLB games, and that's amazing. So yeah.
Well, when I was at Liberty, I got into on the campus station.
Yeah. And
then there was a church. The church had a station there too on campus, so I did work for both.
Yeah.
Jerry Edwards was the guy that hired me. He was the play-by-play voice for the Liberty Flames for a long time. It was an NAIA school at the time and pretty small.
Yeah.
And so you had lots of opportunities. If you wanted to get on the air, you just did it. Even if you were bad at it or you didn't know what you were doing, they were like, go for it. So,
right.
So I was on there, and then I wound up graduating, I guess in '86. Went to work for the Lynchburg Mets, which was a single A team for the New York Mets.
Okay, now that process, so you're just chucking stuff out to anybody, just sending out your tapes and just seeing what sticks, pretty much.
Yeah,
at that point.
Was more a case of I had my buddy and I we had done some play-by-play. They wanted a couple of students on. This is going back to the beginnings of cable TV, but Cox Cable, I think it was in Lynchburg, needed a couple of student announcers to do some some basketball for them. And so the director of the department at Liberty said, well, I got a couple guys that'll do it, so no money at all, but
right.
They'll do it. And so through that, the guy that produced those games for the cable company knew that I had done some play-by-play, and so then they were looking for with the Lynchburg Mets, they were looking for someone to be kind of a backup announcer. They had hired another guy to do the play-by-play, and they wanted somebody to run the board for the commercials, and B, to be on the radio broadcast when the other guy had to go do TV.
Right.
Because they had about 25 TV broadcasts, and I had done a few TV broadcasts like my junior year in college for them. So we kind of it was more of I got an opportunity with my friend Mike, and then they needed a baseball guy, and he wasn't interested in baseball that much.
Yeah.
So I did some on the cable TV, and then I also wound up the next year being hired by that same Class A team.
Gotcha.
Because they knew me.
I guess I should backtrack a smidge. So is your that was all baseball,
right?
Okay. Because so were you calling? When did you start calling basketball? Did you call basketball at Liberty as well, or was it just all baseball? Or was
it was basketball, women's games.
Gotcha.
Some of those. I filled in a couple of times on the Liberty Flames network that Jerry Edwards did. I filled in a couple of men's games.
Did you always feel just comfortable? Was there a sport that you felt more comfortable calling right out of the gate, or was it just you're good with?
Probably, I was good with any of them, but baseball was my initial first love, I guess, because I had done some work in Lynchburg,
right,
with the single A team there on TV, and then doing the basketball I thought was something I could catch on to pretty quick. Football was, I didn't do any football till I really basically got out of college.
Yeah.
There was a couple of high school teams. There's two big high schools there were at the time, EC Glass and Heritage High School.
Mm-hmm.
And EC Glass had one broadcaster, and I did the games for Heritage, which was the other high school team in town. But I hadn't really done any high school football before of any kind.
Yeah.
And so I did that right after college just to make some money.
Right. Huh.
Right after I graduated.
Well, you wouldn't be able to tell what you do it now, but
oh, I had no clue. I had no clue what I was doing.
Yeah, but as long as they don't know.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
So did you? Okay, so then let's talk about how you got to Anaheim.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so.
Well, I went from Lynchburg then, the single A team for the Mets, and then there was a single A team in Roanoke, Virginia, in Salem, which was the Pirates single A team that they hadn't had a radio broadcast before. Yeah. And there being an hour from Lynchburg, they knew the staff, the general manager at Lynchburg, and they said, "Hey, do you know anybody that we could hire to start our radio broadcast?" And they said, "Yeah, we got a backup guy here." So I went and interviewed for it, and I got it.
Yeah.
So that was there for a year, and in the meantime, I sent out, and we won the league championship that year, which was a lot of fun.
Right. And they get to hear you calling.
Right.
Making important calls and things like that.
And
yeah.
so 140 games, and doing the games every night. Most nights I was by myself. Some nights I had a color guy who was with me, who's Dan Bonner, who was on CBS with the March Madness.
He still does that. He still
does it. Yeah, he lived in Virginia, and he was hired by them to work with me too on some of the games. So we would trade off innings, or
right.
And so I got to know Dan that way, and we're still friends to this day. So that's a lot of fun, and he's been doing a lot of CBS games. Then I sent out a bunch of tapes to different teams, and I got a little nibble from Oklahoma City, the AAA team for the Rangers. I didn't know they were looking, but I got a nibble, and they said, "Hey, come on out for an interview."
Yeah.
And I got interviewed, and I got the job.
That's awesome.
And so I wound up moving to Oklahoma City in 1988.
88's when that was.
Yeah. And then I worked for them for the next 8 years. I was a play-by-play. I did I did some media relations for them. I did a little bit of everything. But I only worked from April to September, and then I had to figure out something else to do each year, and I was year to year basically.
Yeah.
No benefits, no contract, nothing.
That's how, okay.
And so I did that for about 8. In the meantime, it was about 8 or 9 years, and interviewed for some other jobs along the way and didn't get those, and so then worked with Oklahoma City until 1994. The guy that owned the team at the time was a guy named Jeffrey Loria, who wound up owning the Miami Marlins, Florida Marlins at the time. They won a World Series with him. So
they'd win one, and they'd rebuild it.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
They'd tear it down, they'd build it back up. But he was our boss. He owned the team in Oklahoma City, so I worked for him for a few years down there. So I got to know him. I'd send out tapes. In the off season, I would do minor league hockey. There was a minor league hockey team in Oklahoma City.
What was that like?
It was really fast.
I would fast. Yeah.
So I did that. I was the backup announcer on that, so I got to travel all over they had teams in Little Rock, Arkansas, and Memphis, and Dallas, Texas, and a couple of one team in Fort Worth, and Wichita, I think, had a team, and so you'd bus everywhere and you'd do hockey games. So that was fun. I did small college basketball and NAIA level, Oklahoma Baptist, which was in Shawnee, Oklahoma, about an hour from Oklahoma City, and I did their games for a few years in the off season. I did high school football in Shawnee, Oklahoma. Just play-by-play in color. So I did a lot of. I had to. I had no choice. I had no other income.
Right.
And so I was scraping together, $25 a game here, $50 a game there.
Yeah.
I did that, and then I'd go back to the baseball every year.
Right.
And then I continued to send out tapes. I've got a stack at home, a couple inches thick of, hey, thank you for your interest.
Mm-hmm.
You sound good. We don't have an opening.
Right.
I even sent some here to Illinois.
Oh, did you?
Yeah, and I knew, of course, I'd grown up with Jim Turpin,
Right.
who did the games for many years, and Larry Stewart before that, if you go back far enough.
Yeah.
And so I'd sent a tape, and they, obviously our positions filled, and so I just poked around different things, and then I wound up getting 2 interviews in the fall of '97. I had sent out some basketball tapes, and I got a response from the Dallas Mavericks.
Yeah.
They called me down for an interview, and I was like runner up there, and then I got an interview with the Texas Rangers.
Yeah.
For baseball, and I got an interview there, and I didn't get either job, but I was close.
Right.
And the managing partner of the Rangers, who I interviewed with, he said, "Just keep plugging away. You're gonna get a job because your stuff's good enough."
Right.
And then
which is a good. The kids need to.
Sure. Yeah. Just keep plugging away. He said,
right.
You're going to do something. And then I'd sent out a tape to Anaheim. I'd actually forgotten anything about sending it out there. I just sent them everywhere.
Right. Yeah.
And all of a sudden, about a week after the Super Bowl in 1998, I get a call saying, "Hey, this is so and so with the Angels. We got your tape. We love it. We'd like you to come out for an interview."
That's great.
And went out for an interview, and interesting story there is I went out and interviewed with the guy, the general manager of the team, or whoever it was that was doing the hiring. At the time I was out there, there was what they called an Angels Fan Fest, like a Sox Fest or and so there's all these
Cardinals got like the winter warm up.
Yeah. So we're going around, and at this place there is there's a little truck, a TV truck, or a little area where you can do play-by-play of a great catch. Mm-hmm. By Jim Edmonds, as it turned out.
That's a question I have right here, but go ahead. Yeah.
Well, so it's a play Jim Edmonds made with the Angels when I think it was against Kansas City, and so
I was going to ask you if you made that call or not. The one where he over his head.
Over his head. Yeah. I did not make that. I obviously didn't call.
Was it the year before you were there? Probably missed by a year or two.
It might have occurred a year or two earlier.
Yeah.
But anyway, what they did was they would have fans come in, and you could record yourself calling the play, and then they would give you a copy of the recording.
Right.
So the guy said that I was with, it was interviewing me, said, "Well, go in and just show us what you got." And of course, there's all these people that have no clue that I'm on an interview, or they have no clue, whatever. So I go in there and I just call it like I see it, whatever it was. And I come out, and the guy looked at one of the other bosses that was there, who was doing the hiring as well, and he goes, "Hiring."
That's awesome.
Because they heard it. And so that's...
So you did get to make that call.
I did get to make that call.
The call got you hired in a way.
Right. Yeah, I did.
Wow. That's...
Yeah.
Because that was one of my questions. I was going to ask the years you were there, and I was going to see if Edmonds was there when you were...
Yeah, he was playing there.
Right. Yeah, because he got traded, I think, in 2000, I believe.
Yeah. So he was there. Darren Erstad was there.
Anderson and Salmon and all that.
Darren Anderson, Tim Salmon. They had a really good team.
Yeah.
But I got hired. We went to spring training in the spring of '98, and then I was there for '98 and '99.
I'm sure all the hustle and bustle and traffic's just like it is here in East Central Illinois.
Yeah.
How? I mean, I can't imagine.
That's a whole different world out there.
Oh, I know.
Yeah.
What was that like? Though? I mean, was it a big? How much of a shock was that? Like as far as just because people don't think,
small town guy.
People don't think about these athletes too. It's another thing, just getting around, just the day to day, and having to get to the stadium and get everywhere. Like I know that I've been out there. I lived in Florida for a few years, and that's a whole other level from here. But LA is a whole other level from Florida, so I can't.
Right.
Yeah, I mean I can't imagine getting used to that.
Yeah, fortunately, when I was out there, most of the games were at night. And so I would go into work about every day for the start of batting practice about 3.
Mm-hmm.
And so there weren't a lot of people there weren't people heading the direction I was heading at 3 o'clock. I was going against the traffic.
Yeah.
And then by the time the game was over,
it
was 11 o'clock at night or 11:30, depending on the start time. And there was a lot of traffic either. So I avoided the day-to-day grinder of trying to go to work every day through traffic.
Right.
I had the benefit of working against the schedule, but that was a wonderful experience. There was a lot of pressure.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Who
was in the booth with you?
A guy named Mario Impemba was with me. We had 2 play-by-play guys. We didn't have a color guy.
Oh,
So
gotcha.
we would each do. The first year he did.
Well, I guess best radio's usually like that. I guess.
Yeah,
So.
he did 6 innings and I did 3.
Yeah.
And in Los Angeles, it was a little unique because Vince Scully, of course, doing the Dodgers for many years, did the games by himself.
Yeah.
Okay. Now later he had some other guys come in. Steiner came in. Rick Monday was there, but for a lot of years he would do the games alone.
Yeah.
And so the Angels kind of copied that, in that there wouldn't be any, like right now, me and Dion, we interact on the air all the time.
Mm-hmm.
Or me and Martin O'Donnell over the years interacted over the air. They didn't want us interacting over the air. It was basically Mario did his innings, and I did mine.
Yeah.
Well, the next year they changed that, where we were both kind of each other's color guy. It was kind of a 2-man team.
Gotcha.
But we didn't have a Major League Baseball player or former player in there with us.
Right.
And so I think that was the reason after a couple of years they were like, okay, we want to try something else, because we've got 2 play-by-play guys.
Mm-hmm.
And I was kind of the junior member of that group, and so I got let go.
Yeah.
You know, hey, we love your work, we'll do anything for you, but
Right.
we're going a different direction.
Yeah.
Okay. But those 2 years were, doing games at Yankee Stadium and Fenway Park, and
Is there a you got a story or a call? Okay, one thing too before I get to that.
Mhm.
Okay, when you're calling baseball, do you have were you a guy that had because football, basketball, it's more instincts because it's going faster.
Mhm.
Baseball, did you ever have any not like calls like this is my home run call, this is this call, this is or whatever, or because you have more time to think of things, I guess, in baseball rather than using your instincts. Did you have things like that, or did you just call what you saw? Or
well, baseball, you do a lot more prep, storytelling, recapping, discussing issues of the day when it comes to Major League Baseball or games, things around baseball.
Yeah.
It's more of a.
I do that too. I try to sync up John Rooney a lot of times with the Cardinal games. Those things too.
Yeah, it's more of a conversation.
Yeah.
Now the game is speeded up now a little bit because
Yeah.
with the pitch clock and everything, so you don't have as much of that. But
On the way here, we were listening to the Cardinals. I was trying to explain to my wife.
Yeah.
Somebody was there was a guy on first, and they threw over twice, and Rooney explained how you only get one more throw over there now since they changed the rules. So I was trying to explain that to her, and that was kind of a mess. She didn't quite pick up. Yeah. So, but yeah, I don't. Them speed up the game. That's a whole other conversation.
But there's much more of a here's the wind, the stretch, and the pitch. It's high, ball 1.
Right. And then a little
now
filler,
what?
just kind of shoot the breeze a little bit.
And then hey, in his last start, so and so threw 6 2/3 innings, and
Yeah.
there's just a lot of stuff you can throw in there. And here's the wind and the 1-1 pitch,
Right.
little outside, ball 2. Or,
Yeah.
here's a throw to first, runner back.
Mm-hmm.
And so you're weaving you're sitting there having a conversation with a listener basically, and you're weaving in action as you go.
Yeah. Right.
So there's, and I think it helps me in my basketball or football play-by-play, because I know that, especially with baseball, people are tuning in and out.
Yeah.
Like you were listening to the Cardinal game, you're probably going to do this and you go back and listen to it again.
Yeah.
So you've missed maybe 2 or 3 innings
Right.
while you've been doing this, and then it's John Rooney's job or whoever's doing it to kind of recap for you as to, okay, so that when you get back in your car, where are we?
Mm-hmm.
Who's ahead? And so I do that a lot, I think, in basketball and football, just because there's more scoring,
Yeah.
especially basketball, especially last night.
Yes.
But I think it's people, you got to remember that people aren't like glued to every word you're saying
Yeah.
for 3 hours.
Gotta keep on
You've got to just kind of keep
recapping.
on, hey, if you've just joined us,
Yeah.
this happened. Illinois was down by 5 at the 10-minute mark. They went on a 15-2 run. They've grabbed
Right.
the lead. Just kind of give a shorthand.
With radio,
Here's where we are.
with radio, there's a lot more.
On radio, there's a lot
recapping.
more chance to
Yeah.
do that. TV, they can.
Right.
TV's a different animal. We can talk about that. But basically, the 2 years in Anaheim were fantastic. I enjoyed the experience immensely.
Mm-hmm.
I did realize how much pressure there is and how everybody wants that job. I did learn that. And that was a little shocking to me. Somebody had told me about that.
Well, that's why you should feel so good about. I mean, you actually doing it. I mean, it's just it's crazy. Those jobs don't grow on trees,
Right.
So to be able to do that for a couple
I had
of years.
the sense there were some. I think when I showed up in Anaheim, and I'd been in Oklahoma City, and here I am, this little, farm kid from in Tolono, Illinois. It's like, well, who's that? Where'd they get this guy?
Yeah, but once you start doing it,
yeah, and
it's-
people would say, hey, you're doing a good job, but there were a lot of people too that, I'm sure in a market that size, you're
Right.
like, well, where do we get, where do we find this guy?
Yeah.
And he does a good job, but I could do it better.
Right.
There was much more of that than I anticipated.
The guy that you were in the booth with, that name didn't ring a bell. Was he? How long was he their play-by-play guy? Like,
He was there from 95 to about, I don't know if it was 01
yeah.
or 02. He left and went on to be the TV voice for the Tigers.
Oh, gotcha.
For Detroit for many years, and then he got let go from that job, and then the last, I think, 5 years Matt Shepard did it, and now Jason Benetti's taken over.
Yeah.
So he was a couple of guys before Jason Benetti in Detroit. He was a really good announcer, solid guy, became a good friend.
Yeah.
But we spent a lot of time together,
right,
for sure.
Okay, so now we get to after Anaheim. You can briefly tell everybody what brought you back here, and then we can start. Then we can start getting into the fun Illinois stuff.
Okay. Well, after Anaheim, they told me my contract wasn't renewed. The guy in Oklahoma City that owned at the time owned the Montreal Expos, who are now the Washington Nationals, of course. He had told me over the years that if I ever need an announcer, if you're ever available, I'll hire you where I'm at.
Yeah.
Because his goal was to own a major league team, and my goal was to get to the big leagues. So,
right.
And he liked my work in Oklahoma City, so I called him right after the Angels let me go, and I said, "Hey, I'm available." He said, "I'll hire you."
Yeah.
So he was going to hire me in Montreal. He had just taken over the ownership of the team. And one of the things he wanted to change, because the Expos were struggling at the time, which is why they wound up moving to Washington.
Yeah.
Because attendance was way down. There wasn't a ton
around
of
around 2000. Yeah. So all the Walker, Grissom, all those guys are long gone.
They were long gone.
Yeah.
And so what had been happening is the team, the Montreal Expos, were paying the radio station to be on the air, a certain amount of money, and they had a French broadcast and an English broadcast, because heavily French up there too.
Yeah.
And he said, "Well, what I'm trying to do," he told me, "is I'm trying to get the radio stations to pay me, not the other way around."
It's not the best.
And so they got into a dispute, a fight, and the radio station was like, "We're not doing that. Why should we pay you?" And so, as it turned out, the job kind of fell through because he was in a legal argument with them. And he called me one time. He said, "You're going to have to probably look for something else."
Yeah.
So I moved back here to Champaign because I didn't want to really live in California.
Yeah.
I had two young daughters, and I didn't want to stay out there.
Right.
And try to make it in expensive California. So I thought, well, I'll come home here and I'll look for work here. And so, as it turned out, I applied. I thought, well, I filled out an application at the News Gazette downtown.
Yeah.
And turned it in, thinking, well, I could at least deliver the paper for a while or something, until I get back on my feet a little bit.
Yeah.
And then I got a call the next day from Stevie J, who was working here at WDWS and was the general manager by then.
So he was here before 93.
He was here, yeah. He worked at WLRW in town, and then he moved to WDWS and been on the air for a long time and worked his way up, and then he was the general manager. And they were going through a lot of changes. Jim Turpin had retired as the general manager. They went through a handful of GMs, and they hired Stevie.
So Jim Turpin not only called Illinois, he was the general manager of the...
He was the GM of the... which I can't even imagine doing.
Yeah, I didn't know that.
Radio station, and doing the games, and doing the Penny for Your Thoughts show.
Yeah,
he did all of that. And so Stevie said, "Well, I don't have anything right now, but you're hired."
Yeah.
And I thought, okay, well, what does that mean?
Kind of a Swiss Army knife there for a while. Yeah.
So then he hired me to do some part-time work for him at WDWS. And then he added me to the morning show on the WDWS, and he said, "You want to read news?" And I was like, "Well, I guess I can read news. I haven't read any news on the air since college, but sure, I'll do that."
Yeah.
So I got started that way. Was part of the morning show for several years with him, and got on the air with Mike Hale as well on the Light Rock side. But anyway, in those early years, I was on the air with Stevie for a couple of years, and then Jim Turpin was about to retire. And then he retired in 02.
Yep.
And the folks at the University of Illinois, Ron Gunther and those folks approached me and said, "Hey,
Yeah.
Would you be interested in being our new play-by-play guy? And I was
Right.
like, well, absolutely.
That's
you know,
awesome.
I had thought about coming here. I didn't think the job would ever be open, frankly.
Yeah.
Jim had done it forever, and I wasn't going to be here anyway, and it didn't really matter.
Right.
But then when I was here and working at the station where the games are on, I thought, well, let's do
absolutely.
it. So
Absolutely.
I mean, I wasn't going to turn that down for sure. So
Got here at a good time too, team wise. So you had who was it? It was Bardo first. Is that who you were paired up with basketball, and then and then Jerry Hester?
Yeah, started with Stephen Bardo. Stephen had just come on to start working with Jim Turpin.
Yeah.
And Lauren Tate,
had
been with Jim for many years.
Right.
And Lauren was starting to get out of it, or they wanted to make do something different there. So they kind of kept Lauren on as a pre-game or halftime, post-game guest kind of thing, and then they hired Stephen Bardo.
Mm-hmm.
And then when Jim retired, then I took over, and I still had Stephen with me.
Right.
And then Lauren Tate as well.
Yeah.
So it was kind of a three-man team in a way.
Right.
And so we were all there up, 02, Bill Self, start of the Bruce Weber era, the 04, 05. And then Stephen was starting to do a lot of, he had been hired up at CBS Channel 2 in Chicago, did some sports up there. And then he started doing a lot of ESPN games. And then it became apparent that he just couldn't commit full time to Illinois. Mm-hmm. So then we hired Jerry Hester then to take his place.
Yeah.
That was about 06, I think, 06, 07.
I gotta talk about Hester too here in a little bit because I have a little story about him. But one thing I was going to ask too, with football, you're going to have a new partner here this upcoming season, and I was kind of curious the process of breaking in a new partner, like what the challenges are, how you prepare, with a new partner, things like that, the process that goes into getting ready, get your chemistry down as much as you can before the game start and all that kind of stuff. So, because that'll be happening here, right? So
yeah. Well, I started with when I took over, Jim Grabowski.
Yeah.
It was interesting because the first football game I did for Illinois, and like I said, I'd been doing high school football for a few years, but I hadn't done it in a while. It had been a few years since when I was with the Angels and coming back, and the first game of the 2000 football season, Jim wasn't feeling good. He was having some health issues at the time. And so I had literally just gotten back from California, I don't know, 5 months earlier, whatever, in April or May. And the first game was at San Diego State.
Yeah.
So I go out there and they said, well, we'll have you fill in for Jim. And, it was like, well, it's been a while since I've done a football game, but absolutely, I'm going to do this.
Right.
And I did okay. I mean, I thought it was okay. I could have done better, but I was doing the best I can. One, I was scared to death because I was, taking over, filling in for, a guy who had been doing it for a long time.
Right.
And two, working with Jim Grabowski and wanting to do a good job. And so, it was, and the San Diego State wore these awful uniforms. You couldn't read the numbers.
Right.
I mean, it was kind of pieced together.
Yeah.
But they loved it. They thought it sounded good, and I think they were impressed with my approach to calling the game. And by my standards, it wasn't what I thought it should be, but it was okay.
Yeah, I will say that's how you know you're better than most is when you don't think it's like when you see yourself, you don't think it's very good, but everybody else thinks it's good. So like your level is higher than everybody else's in your mind. You know what I mean? Because like if you do something and they're like, I don't think I did very good, but everybody else thought it was really good, then that's how you know you're one of the best.
And I was, I just was trying to hang in there and do the best I could on that. I filled in for Jim a couple other times that year for over the couple of years, and then a couple basketball games here and there.
Yeah.
And then when he retired, then of course, Grabowski did the football with me for a few years, and then he retired, and then we looked about, I think it was about 07, somewhere in there. Right before the Rose Bowl year, maybe right ahead of it, I guess.
Yeah.
Grabowski stepped down, and so then we went, did some searching, and then they interviewed some people, and we hired Howard Griffith.
Right.
And so Howard was hired. We announced it. Howard Griffith's our new color guy, and then 2 weeks later he got hired by the Big Ten.
Right.
And of course he's still there.
Yes.
All these years later. And then Kittner was kind of our other candidate that we came in the final 2 or 3.
Yeah, I thought I enjoyed
Yeah.
listening to him. I thought he did a really good job.
Mm-hmm. So he was good and brought a quarterback perspective, you
Yep.
know, and had a lot of success. And
I didn't realize how Griffith got it
Yeah.
first. Yeah, I didn't know.
yeah, he had it first, had about 2 weeks.
Yeah.
And then and Kintner did it for several years, and then he wanted to step aside be with his family, he had a young family. And then Martin O'Donnell had been doing the post-game call-in
Yeah.
show, on our local station here at WDWS, and so he'd been on the air for several years. So it was kind of a no-brainer. Like,
Yeah.
okay, we got a guy right here.
Mm-hmm.
Let's do it. And of course, over the last 9 years, he's been spectacular,
Right.
doing the games with me. But now he's reached the point Kurt did.
Yeah.
I was like, hey, I want to spend some time with my family on Saturdays, and so we'll start looking here soon.
Yeah.
And we got some names in mind of people that I think would be good to consider, and whether they can do it or not, or what their schedule allows is a whole other matter. But basically, what I've tried to, you asked your original question about how I basically have worked with my color commentators is, I'll tell you the what, where, and when.
Mm-hmm.
You tell me the how and why.
Right. Yeah.
How this is working, why this is working, why it's not working,
Yeah.
and just kind of start there.
But will you meet with them and do do you guys do like a trial run? Do you call things beforehand, or is like the first game of the year? Will that be the first time you guys have done a game together, or do you
It's usually
is there practice beforehand, or is
No,
there
not really.
Yeah.
I mean, the only practice there might be is like a spring game,
Right. Yeah.
where you kind of get a feel for it, which is not really a game, but it's, enough
Yeah.
action to kind of give you a feel for each other. But no, at first game, we were ready to go.
Right.
And I think, Martin, I knew he would do well, and he just grew into
Yeah.
an outstanding color guy. But
Yeah.
but I just divvied up like that. Same way with basketball.
Mm-hmm.
When I was with Jerry Hester and then Dion and Doug and you just tell me you guys played at this level.
Right.
I didn't. I don't know what it's like to be
Yeah.
in the huddle. I don't know what it's like to be blocking a 300-pound defensive end. I have no idea.
Right.
But they do. Martin does. Kurt Kittner, I had no idea what it's like to have a blitz coming at you,
Mm-hmm.
but he did.
Yeah.
So he can explain the game, the how and the why, so much better than I can.
Right.
I mean, I've watched football my whole life. I get
Right.
the sport, but I don't know the intricacies of the middle of a heated battle like
Yeah.
they do.
The
And so
sport-
just
yeah.
trying to get them to trying to help them and what basically have them explain to the fans in a way
Mm-hmm.
that's understandable that here's what happened
Right.
and here's why.
Like being up against a break, though, just things like that. Does it take somebody time just to? Because this is more TV, I think. But somebody will be in the ear, like you got 15 seconds to say what you're going to say, and then we got to go.
Yeah.
Things like that. Like, does that take time to get used to and things like that? Like,
Well, you get practiced at it, but
Right.
it's you know that there's going to be certain when the guy with the red hat comes out, there's a timeout.
yeah,
So you got to wrap it up.
yeah,
TV's a little different animal because the producer in the truck is in charge.
right,
On the radio, you're in charge.
yeah.
There's a little
That's true.
difference.
Yes,
There's a little
yes.
difference, but obviously, that our engineer, Ed Bond for years,
Mhm.
will watch the red hat guy, and when he comes out, he'll
Still-
say, "Let's take a break."
Yeah.
And so you go to break.
Right.
TV, there's like a hard,
Yes. Yeah.
they're counting down, they're showing video, they're
Right.
showing a highlight, and they're going to break, and you're done. So
Right.
you'll be on TV. You'll have, and I've done some work for BTN over the years, several years ago now, but. You have a producer in your ear counting down,
Yeah.
5, 4, while you're finishing your sentence. You're hearing a guy
Right.
talk in your ear.
But radio, there's
radio,
no-
you
it's
don't
just,
have that.
It's just you
No,
doing.
it's just you. I mean,
Yeah.
you're the guy.
You're the boss.
So.
Yeah. Because even the Super Bowl this past year, Romo's catching a little heat for talking through that last, just things like that.
Yeah.
I wondered if that was
Yeah.
something that ever happens. But okay, let's see here. I've done the Anaheim stuff. See my chicken scratch here.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah. When here, I was going to ask too if okay, this is what I was going to ask you. There's a caveat to this question though. I wanted like a couple of your. I'll just have you say two favorite games, moments, whatever, calling Illinois basketball, but you're not allowed to use the 05 season, and you're not allowed to use the Tyler Griffey layup.
Okay. other than those two.
Right. So what would you say? It could be a game, a call, a moment, or whatever it is. But maybe give me a couple of your favorites with the basketball.
With basketball,
Yeah.
well, let me think. I would say
05's just way too easy.
Yeah, 05 is way too easy. Final Four was unbelievable. The Louisville game and so forth.
Yeah, I mean, you got to call a national. You got to
Arizona
call a
game.
national championship game.
Yeah, that was cool.
Yeah.
I would say some of those early years with Bill Self, going to Maui. I think those have been really cool.
Yeah.
I've been out to Maui 4 times now. That tournament is awesome. Doing games from there. It's interesting because you're doing a game in the middle of the day, and it's like 10 o'clock or 11 o'clock back home.
Yeah.
So that's kind of a fun sensation. I've been able to, we did games in Padre Island. We've done games in Las Vegas. I remember a game I forget what year it was, 01, 02, somewhere in Las Vegas.
Mm-hmm.
I was filling in for Jim. Illinois was playing in a high school gym. I think Greg Maddox's old high school, I think, in Las Vegas. Big high school gym, but the tournament was in there, and we made it to the championship game against Southern Illinois, and Bruce Weber was coaching Southern Illinois.
I think I remember that.
And I think Sean Harrington hit a big shot in that game, and we won. I just remember thinking, who's this coach out there that won't stay off the floor?
Yeah.
And it was Bruce Weber.
Yeah.
And of course later we wound up working with him and being friends with him. So that was interesting to do. I think the Big Ten championship game or the game we won the Big Ten title against Iowa was probably just that whole day was surreal. With Nebraska, the last place team, taking out Wisconsin in Madison, totally unexpected. And then the rest of the afternoon, it was like a explosion of energy.
Yeah.
As people saw that result, and then knowing if you could beat Iowa, you could win a share of the Big Ten. That whole day was pretty surreal. So
yeah,
I remember that, and the rushing of the court, and COVID for a different reason. We did, of course, the home games we did in an empty arena.
Yeah. Road
games we did calling them off a TV screen.
Yeah.
At Bielefeld.
Does that feel like? Well, I don't know. Sometimes to me it feels like that was 20 years ago, but other times it feels like I don't know. But
yeah, I wouldn't want to do that again.
You guys were talking. I think one of the things when I was looking you up, researching a little bit, there was a YouTube one where it was you and Dion, and I think it was his pod actually or something. But you guys, it was right after all that. Because I remember you talking about Plumbers would have been like what 20. It was the year that first year I was left. Cabral was supposed to be a sophomore, I think.
Yeah.
So whatever. But you guys were talking about that, and my brain can't even go back to that hardly. Just thinking about everything being empty, and so I can't imagine.
That was hard.
Calling games.
Yeah, calling game off of TV is not ideal.
Yeah.
But we did. Now we made the best we could out of it, and I thought.
And we were good, so it's like
it was a good team.
Really important games.
Yeah.
With no noise. It's just
no noise. What we tried to do is we were able to the engineers that would work for the teams we were playing.
Yeah.
Would send us an audio feed.
Yeah.
And even though there was no crowd, there was some noise. And whatever, if there was a place that had a crowd or a very small crowd, you at least have some crowd noise.
Yeah.
And they would pipe in crowd noise, basically.
Yeah.
Which made it sound realistic enough that we were actually there.
Right.
And in fact, I had several people that year that said, I didn't know you weren't there.
Yeah.
That you weren't in Michigan or you weren't in wherever.
Right. Which is good, but
I wouldn't.
The people actually working it. I can
as
imagine.
Jim Turpin told me that year, he said, "Don't get too good at that, or that's what they'll want to do."
True.
Going forward, so
yeah.
So I wouldn't want to live through that again.
Yeah. And it was just bizarre. I remember sitting there, and we were rolling pretty good there that year that the tournament got canceled, and
yeah,
probably would have had a 5-6 seed somewhere in there, but we're playing well, and
that was a great game too. The Kofi block on Garza at the end of the game.
Yeah, that was great. And the one, well, here I got a question coming up where I'll bring this guy up, but that year was bizarre. But real quick too, I just thought about this. So like a game, because you're busy, you're traveling. Let's say so you're going to Wisconsin.
Mm-hmm.
So like what's a day like leading up to a game look like for you? Like are you what time do you get this? Just like honestly your kind of routine, like on a game day, like on the road. So just when you get there and prep and all that kind of good stuff. But
Yeah, well, my prep, like we got a game with Wisconsin this weekend.
assuming football, I'm assuming football is much more thorough.
Yeah, football is much more thorough.
Yes.
Basketball, it takes me 2 to 3 hours to get a score sheet ready.
Yeah.
I've already been working on Wisconsin this week, so I'm already ahead. In fact, I've printed off material for Purdue,
Yeah.
so I try to work about a game ahead.
Right.
The Minnesota game, of course, is just completed, so. But I've got my Wisconsin score sheet about half done already.
Yeah.
Just looking up, every team has game notes, and so I've gone through online all of Wisconsin's notes and made notes on each of their players and all the guys they have. So I'm basically over half done.
Yeah.
I'll go home today and get ready. Tomorrow we leave. I think our flight's at 5 something,
Yeah.
and it's only about a 45-minute flight to Madison.
Right.
So we'll go up there. This year, not every coach has done it this way, and it varies year to year. But this year they'll go from the airport to the arena, get everybody off the bus, put up a few shots. Nothing really organized other than just shoot.
Yeah.
And then they'll pack up, go back to the hotel, and have a team dinner. They'll watch their film. I've watched some of that. It's interesting.
Yeah. Are you around? Are you around the team while this is going on? So
yeah, in the dining room watching film with them.
So you get to hear Coach.
Yeah, talk about they have all the players talking about the scouting report and what this guy does well and what he doesn't do well and so forth and then they'll that's it for dinner and they'll wrap it up for the night and then the next day, depending on the time of the game, usually the visiting team gets to shoot around first.
Yeah.
So if it's a 6 o'clock game, you might get to shoot around at 11 a.m.
Mm-hmm.
So you go back over, they'll do their final scouting report, prep, what they call a walkthrough, basically, shoot around.
Yep.
Brad Underwood's are different than most teams. His are a little more full tilt.
Are they?
Other coaches would walk through, literally walk through what the other team runs.
Yeah.
If you're at a really early game, sometimes they'll have to do the walkthrough in a ballroom at the hotel, where they put down the free throw line and the lane and walk through the plays that the other team's going to run to kind of get a last minute scouting report.
I was a varsity coach, and one time I had to use the library. I was just moving desks around for the other team and stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, just whatever they'll give you.
Same idea.
Yeah.
And so sometimes you have to do that. We had to do that at Tennessee. The game was early, Tennessee time this last year, this season. So we didn't really get to shoot around. That was one of the few times we haven't been able to at least get to the arena.
That didn't have anything to do with Tennessee? Just you get us not getting to shoot before the game?
No, it's just the home team has a certain time they're going to shoot, and you're kind of at the mercy of what time they want to do it.
Gotcha.
So you try to work on it, like when teams come to Champaign.
No gamesmanship or anything.
Well, yeah,
just
when the teams come to State Farm Center, they usually shoot in the morning.
Right.
Minnesota would have shot.
Yeah.
Whatever that was, Wednesday morning, and we shoot in the afternoon. So the home team sets the
Yeah.
Whatever the home team, whatever team the home team's going to wear the uniform, well then the other team reacts accordingly. So there's an advantage to being at home for sure. But then like in Wisconsin, and we'll do the shoot around, go back 4 hours. They always eat 4 hours before every game. Before that meal, Underwood will come down. We'll do our pregame interview.
Right.
I usually interview an assistant coach, Chester or Jeff or Tyler Underwood or whoever's doing the scout for that day.
You guys always you usually talk to the radio guy from the other.
Usually talk to the radio guy from the other team. That can either be live or taped, depending on how long their show is. So kind of work on all that, and then sit down and our local pregame here in Champaign on our 2 stations here.
Yeah.
Starts 2 hours before game, and then our network pregame starts an hour. And
gotcha. Yeah.
And then you tip off and you go.
There you're off to the races.
Yeah.
Can you put your fan hat on for just a second? Okay. If you have let's say you have a Mount Rushmore of your favorite Illinois players, basketball players. If they have to be before you, we're calling games, so you're not showing any favoritism, or it can be or whatever. But
I know I can.
And then I might get mine too. See if we got any.
Yeah, well, early because I went to games early when I was a kid. Nick Weatherspoon was probably my favorite player.
Yeah.
Growing up in the early 70s. I thought he was fantastic. Eddie Johnson was a favorite.
Yeah.
Of course, hit the game-winning shot against Michigan State, and I was there for that. I was in the stands. Derek Harper was a lot of fun to watch.
Yeah.
Of course, the Flying Illini, any of those guys
Right.
are a favorite. Kendall Gill, Nick Anderson particularly, I think.
Yeah.
You know, Dion was a favorite, of course, getting to work with him now. Andy Kaufman, I thought was a really fun player to watch.
Yeah.
Jerry Hester,
He was
who
fun.
I also wound up working with, I thought was a fun
Yeah.
player. You get into the, you know, Brian Cook was fabulous. Lucas Johnson was a whole lot of fun to watch.
That group had lots of guys.
Yeah,
that
a
were
lot
just,
of guys that were really good. That's
that Arizona game.
Yeah,
when
the Elite Eight team gets overlooked a lot.
They-
how good they were, because they were really good.
Yes.
And then of course anybody on the 05 team, you know, Darren and Dee and Luther and Roger and James. I mean, they were. That team is unique unto itself. I would say DJ Richardson was a lot of fun to watch.
Yeah.
Nana Egwu was an interesting player. I always
Right.
enjoyed his work ethic and how hard he worked. Trying to think, and then of course the current guys. I mean, Sincere Harris is a funny,
Yeah.
you know, great sense of humor, young man, always a big smile.
Right.
Enjoy being around
And
him.
he's gonna have to really cut in there next year.
Yeah,
Too.
yeah. I think Quincy Guerrier's just got a
I
young,
love him.
young
I love
child.
him.
He's a fun guy to be around. Marcus Damas, Luke Goody. It's a good group.
It is.
Yeah.
Old,
this
mature,
group has the, since the 05 team is the most connected offensively I've seen.
Yeah.
And I
agree.
think the Ken Palm and all the efficiency numbers kind of show that.
Right.
But off the court too, this team really likes each other.
Yeah.
There have been years where guys tolerated each other.
Yeah. Very
You know,
recently.
Yeah, and tolerated, and even in the team that won the Big Ten, you know, it was a struggle that year
Right.
because we had guys hurt. We had there was no flow to anything,
Right.
and to Brad Underwood.